Hello everyone, my name's Amy Rodd and today I'll be your guest lecturer for NM1210 Lens-Based Practice. In today's lecture, I'll be taking you through the experience of wonder in contemporary fine art photography. Before we get into the topic, I'll give you a bit of background on myself. I'm a fine art photographer and illustrator. I'm a PhD student at JCU and my research focus is on wonder in contemporary fine art photography. The photographs you see displayed are a few of my works I created that were intended to invoke wonder. Today, we will be looking at elements of my research focus, primarily on the experience of wonder, wonder in art, and artistic use of wonder. In today's lecture, we will be unpacking some concepts about wonder, including understanding wonder, the experience of wonder, the emotion of wonder, which includes the evolution of emotional memory, perceiving emotions, categories of emotion, emotional attachment formed with fictional characters. We will also be looking at wonder in art, artistic use of wonder, the challenge of photography as art photography as medium for wonder, reading photographs as a method of analysis for photography, and artists that create wonder in their work. It is important to note that throughout this lecture, example artworks will be shown that support the discussion topic. These works will not be alluded to directly. However, we will be considering a couple of these artists' work directly in the last section of this lecture. Until we reach this point, be mindful of each artwork and their possible relationship to the specific topic at hand. It is important to ponder these elements yourself before we engage in a larger discussion, as the very nature of wonder is subjective, and each of you will likely respond to the works in a unique way. If you would like to take note of the artist's work within this image, they are as follows. The top left is the artist Flock van Lith. The top middle is Brooke Shaden, and the top right is Maggie Taylor. The bottom left is Jennifer Thorson. The bottom middle is Loretta Lux, and the bottom right is V. Spears. Wonder is an ethereal quality that draws the spectator in to inspect the work closer, to reflect on the symbology and narrative behind the work and consider the message the artist has put forth. Wonder is present in many Western contemporary artworks. It might be considered that it is a sense of wonder that is the force behind what makes an artwork effective. Wonderment plays a critical role in fine art, encouraging both artist and spectator to perceive, interpret, reiterate, and reflect ideas and issues relevant to contemporary society. It stands to reason that artworks contain some sense of wonder for the spectator to be drawn into reflecting on the work. Work that captures the spectator's imagination capitalizes on this. Sophia Vasiliou believes there are two types of wonder that can be experienced. The first type of wonder is childlike wonder, as children learn about the world with a sense of wonderment. This first type of wonder is present when experiencing something for the first time. The second type of wonder is learned wonder, learning to perceive things in a new light or with a new mindset. It often requires effort to see something as extraordinary where it was not considered so before, and is the product of deliberate technique. It can be argued that artists use these two types of wonder subconsciously, although some would create work that depicts wonder consciously, when creating a compelling artwork that naturally embodies a sense of wonderment. Wonder is described as the desire to know the cause of that which appears significant and unusual. It is a response to the beautiful, something that strikes as intensely powerful or real. The feeling of wonder is described as passionate, extraordinary, and unexpected. The emotion of wonder is sustained in the spectator when the object that elicits the wondering draws the spectator's attention, which leads to tentative meaning. The spectator will attempt to decipher the meaning behind the work through reflection and introspection. Howard Parsons believes it might be considered that it is a sense of wonder that is the essence behind what makes an artwork effective. It encourages the spectator to consider the artwork and develop a train of thought based on the narrative behind the work. Sophia Vasiliou believes wonder is something that everybody has experienced in their life. Howard Parsons proposes the excitation of wonder ranges from intense and sudden to graduate and moderate. He suggests wonder is an inquisitive interest in an object or experience. The physiological response when experiencing wonder is suspended breathing with wide open eyes, raised eyebrows, relaxed body, and the mouth falling open. Wonder is described as a passive emotion that encourages the spectator to stop and consider the artwork, encouraging contemplation and curiosity to understand the object on a deeper level. This connotation, according to David Bate, is dependent on the knowledge of the spectator. This is how we read artworks. In order to understand the emotion of wonder, basic understanding of how the brain creates emotions might produce further insight into how wonder might be understood. Humans have developed a neocortex part of the brain, which is larger than any other species and separates humans from other primates. The neocortex is the seat of thought. It's the part of the brain that comprehends what the senses perceive. This part of the brain allows humans to have feelings towards thoughts and actions, feelings about ideas, art, symbols, and meanings. It is both the developed neocortex and developed amygdala of the human mind that allows the established emotional repertoire contemporary society and individuals experience today. Humans have two amygdala, one on each hemisphere of the brain towards the side of the head. The amygdala provides all passion in life. It is a storehouse of emotional memory, the part of the brain which adds significance to life. The unconscious opinions of individuals are developed from emotional memories, which are stored within the amygdala. It is the subconscious viewpoint of an individual that will decide whether they will like something within the first few milliseconds of perceiving it. The cognitive unconscious, which presents an opinion and provides an emotion which may seem to have a mind of its own, independent of the rational mind. It is the cognitive unconscious that decides when it is looking at something, whether it's automatically liked or disliked. The hippocampus sector of the brain also plays a vital role for an emotional experience. The hippocampus is more involved in registering and making sense of perceived patterns. It provides the context for emotional meaning. The hippocampus recognizes someone's face, but it's the amygdala that adds how you feel about that person. The amygdala and hippocampus work together to register memories. The hippocampus retrieves information, and the amygdala determines if it has any emotional relevance. The experiences that scare or thrill people the most are among the most ingrained memories. In addition, the brain has two memories, according to Daniel Goleman, one for ordinary memory and one for emotionally charged memory. There was a series of studies done in 2009 by Bernard Rhyme, which showed that 90% of emotions that were salient enough to be remembered had also been shared with one or more people. This might suggest that events become more emotionally significant when being experienced with someone else. So to put this into context, if you go to an exhibition and experience a sense of wonder, that experience would be heightened and be more memorable if you experience it with somebody else. There was a psychological investigation done in 1996 by Patricia Steckley and Loretta LaRoque, which found that individuals chose to watch films they expected would induce the emotions they wanted to experience. Films that were expected to induce emotions the individuals did not want to experience were avoided. Upon watching the selected film, the mood of the spectator changed, matching the character's mood within the film if the character was identified with or had a personality that the spectator related to. The enjoyment of the film was based on the story and the experience of emotions the individual expected to feel, which were enhanced when watched with a friend or partner. This reiterates that events and emotions become more significant when experienced with another person. Going back to the gallery example, if you go to an exhibition where you expect to feel or experience a certain emotion, like that of wonder, the event becomes more significant when experienced with another person. Categories of emotion help determine the different types of emotions that are experienced in order to situate how and why wonder might be felt and what stimulus might help develop the feeling of wonder. According to Keith Oatley, there is a family of emotional phenomena, different categories of emotion that help understand the subtle but distinctive nuances of emotion. These include moods, sentiments, and preferences. Moods are an emotion that might seem to be triggered at random. The length and time a mood might last can range anywhere from between a couple of hours to a couple of days. Examples of moods include cheerfulness, irritability, and sadness. Sentiments are emotional states relating to other people and are consistent and long-lasting. These are based on observation of character and experiencing events together. Examples of sentiments include strong eternal love or distrust towards someone. Preference is personal to each individual. It might be considered a silent emotion, apparent only when a choice is made. Preference is unique for each person and expressed in a subtle way. It is often an unconscious choice based on predilections from an individual's culture and upbringing. While moods may seem to occur at random, they are often the expressed emotion from an unconscious feeling dwelling underneath the surface of the individual. Emotions are most typically caused by appraisals or evaluations of events in relation to what is important to each individual. Each individual is bound and influenced by goals, concerns, and aspirations. Keith Oatley describes emotions as signals that steer an individual to a decision that is valued. Emotions provide other people insight into an individual's core belief system and preference. Feeling an emotion forces an individual to consider the event that caused the emotion in the first place, think in a different manner, and weigh the implications based on the event and the emotion felt. Emotions are insistent and strong, shown through the individual's reaction to the emotion, and requires concentration on the emotion itself and its perceived implications. Emotions not only change the mental state of a person, but many emotions also cause bodily changes. Examples of physical change when experiencing an emotion include passive relaxation of the body when experiencing wonder, a pounding heart when experiencing anxiety, or a clenched fist when experiencing anger. To take the categories of emotion and put them into context, the emotion of wonder would then likely be considered a subjective emotion based on cultural upbringing, the society they are raised in, individual preference based on family life and experiences. For the emotion of wonder to take place, the individual would then also be influenced and bound by moods, the sentiment and feeling towards the person they are experiencing the object that may elicit the wondering with, if they are with someone at all, and also influenced by individual preferences to style and taste. Keith Oatley believes emotions are the process that makes life significant. Emotions are not fixed, they are based on what individuals come to know from culture, what is believed to be socially appropriate, and individual preferences. People often recognize emotions from facial expressions, tone of voice, gestures, and actions. Mirroring occurs when adults observe the facial expressions of others. For example, when we observe others smiling, we often smile in response, spontaneously mirroring the expressions we see. People that frequently mirror each other will feel as though the other person they are sharing an experience with are on the same level as them, as their body language is reciprocated back to them. Studies in neuroimaging show that the brain areas that recognize the facial expression of an emotion, like that of wonder, are the same brain areas triggered when actually experiencing the emotion firsthand. To bring this into context, when we visit an art exhibition and we see characters within the artworks depicting certain emotions, we are experiencing the emotions ourselves on some level through empathy with a character. Oatley considers art a possibility to change the spectator's outlook on life. He considers the individual's outlook is changed through mirroring emotional states of a perceived character and empathizing with the character's ordeals. Art enables an experience of emotions in a context that would not normally be available. Through reading a book, watching a movie, or viewing an artwork, the spectator can engage with the vicissitudes of the protagonist, providing the spectator with the range of emotions the character is confronted with. This provides the spectator with new possibility to think from different viewpoints and change the way the world is viewed. Oatley believes the spectator projects meanings onto the work of art. Not just any meaning is projected onto the work, but rather the meaning is based on a family of meaning, which is developed through the symbology provided in the artwork, chosen by the artist with intent. Artworks often embody a narrative based around themes and stories seen in everyday life. An emotional response is the desired outcome of observing the artwork. There are patterns of events that can promote new, fresh emotions in the spectator. A particular emotion is caused by particular patterns, according to Oatley. These are called patterns of appraisal and go back to Aristotle, who proposed a particular pattern of events is capable of causing an emotional response. For example, these particular emotions might be caused by these particular events. Happiness arises with success or reunions with friends. Sadness with losses, anger with frustrations, and fear arises with anxiety or danger. Keith Oatley has developed a theory called the Rasa theory of emotions. His theory is that enjoyment of a fictional story or imaginary world comes from recognizing an emotion that has been personally experienced by the spectator in real life, but is presented in a new context by the character. The spectator experiences emotions in a way that makes them understand the emotion and their train of thought more clearly. Through this process, the spectator may be able to make some changes in their own lives through introspection on their own feelings and thoughts. This might be understood within a clearer context if you consider the emotions you experience when watching a good movie or reading a good book. The emotions experienced are based on a pattern of appraisal the character undergoes and relating to the character and emotions you yourself have experienced. Attachments can be formed with fictional characters, with contemporary art providing a platform for the spectator to empathize with characters and events in an imaginary world. An imaginary world is the world the artist creates that the character within the artwork exists in. The spectator is provided the possibility to relate to the situation the character is undergoing in the scene within the artwork. Through this process, an emotional attachment might be formed if the spectator finds the artwork compelling and is able to relate to the character or events shown in the imaginary world. Keith Oatley proposes that feeling empathy with another being is a developed emotion that only primates display. Edward Roseman and Paul Rosen in 2006 found that people do not empathize or feel sympathy for someone who is successful unless that person is a close friend or known very well. People readily sympathize with the person who is in difficulties. This might suggest that viewing a character within an imaginary world undergoing difficulties might help the spectator reflect on their own struggles and subsequently make sense of them. There are certain kinds of events that hold strong fascination for people. These particular events are not only shown in media and news stories, but are also the main storylines in popular fiction. These events include accidents, falling in love, fights and assaults with other people, betrayals, injustices, falls from grace, and suffering from loss. These events might be considered important when triggering wonder, providing a possibility to see a storyline anew or produce fresh emotions the spectator did not expect to feel. Wayne Booth argues strongly that characters and authors of fiction are perceived as friends. Kendall Walton considers that humans perceive fictional characters as real as you and me, just on a different plane of existence. They are perceived in the same context as real friends. There is a psychological bond formed with the characters in fiction, the same kind of bond that is formed with real people. The brain stores the memory of a fictional character in the same area of the brain as that of a real friend. Walton suggests that people perceive characters as real on some level, even with the knowledge that they do not and cannot exist. They are placed in a fictional world. Placing the fictional character in an imagined world helps keep them alive on some psychological level. There is a belief that the character exists within a different reality to the real world, attempting to have the character exist when it is understood that they cannot possibly exist. Wendy Gardner and Megan Knowles in 2008 investigated how people see fictional characters. The investigation looked at favorite and disliked fictional characters within a television show. The study revealed that favorite fictional characters are considered more real to people than non-favorites, with the spectator's sense of whether the character was real determined by people's preference for liking of the character. So if you look at an artwork and can relate to the character within the artwork, empathize with the character's plight, and you feel you can connect with their situation and who they are, you will feel that they are real to you on some level. Artists can apply practiced wonder in a deliberate way to help the spectator consider both the idea behind the artwork and the narrative of the artwork in a new light. This concept is expressed as the artist guides the spectator to see something as extraordinary where they did not do so before. The spectator responds to the work in a natural way, experiencing the artwork for the first time in the same experience of childlike wonder, providing the opportunity to perceive the artwork as beholding something extraordinary. The feeling of wonder can be transferred from the artist into symbolic expression produced in the artwork. Wonder, according to Howard Parsons, is created through color, line, form, and the meaning behind the work. The artist initially has to undergo wonder, and the feeling is redeveloped and recreated through the spectator. Parsons suggests that wonder may pass into symbolic expression in art, renewing the excitement and curiosity of the feeling of wonder the artist initially experiences, transferring the wonderment into the artwork itself. The artist originally has to undergo wonder and creates wonder in their work, with the feeling of wonder recreated in the spectator looking upon the artwork. Parsons believes it is the natural receptive skill of the artist creating this feeling of wonder through a symbolic artwork that seems to expand consciousness of the spectator. Galleries and museums recreate the experience of wonder through illusion and unattainability of being unable to own the art object that elicits the wonder. Stephen Greenblatt believes it is the transformation of the experience of viewing the artwork in a gallery that heightens the charisma of the artworks. The artworks displayed possess the power to arouse wonder through the layout of exhibited artworks and careful lighting. The association of boutique lighting, along with transparent plastic rods and other devices, create magical illusions of weightless suspension, which also adds to the feeling of wonder. Taking Sofia Vassilyou's idea of the two definitions of wonder, it might be considered that artists subconsciously utilize these two kinds of wonder, childlike and deliberate, when creating a compelling artwork that naturally embodies a sense of wonderment. It might be considered that artists apply practiced wonder in a deliberate way to help the spectator see an idea or object in a new light. The concept is expressed as the artist guides the spectator to see something as extraordinary where they did not do so before. The spectator responds to the work in a natural way, experiencing the artwork for the first time in the same first-time experience of childlike wonder, perhaps perceiving the artwork as beholding something extraordinary. Howard Parsons believes artists wish to communicate and share their view of the world and influence spectator thinking. He believes the will to wonder comes easily for an adult whose childhood was well loved and well taught, as the child has a readiness to explore the world and open their mind up to imaginative possibilities. Photography is a medium that is still often viewed in contemporary society as a medium that records the truth. The perceived truthfulness of photography has been dominant since the medium first came into existence. It is the perceived truthfulness of photography that can give staged, constructed photographs their edge. While the spectator may understand that they are viewing an artistic photograph, the realism can be very seductive and help the spectator consider the idea the artist is portraying. Richard Salkeld argues that stage photography has been around as long as the medium has existed. Hippolyte Bayard produced the first known staged photograph in 1840. In 1858, the photographer Henry Preach Robinson produced a staged photograph called Fading Away, which showed a subject dying of tuberculosis. Spectators were understood to feel discomfort when it was revealed the photograph was staged. They were offended at the artificiality of the photograph and viewed it as inauthentic and a violation of the photographic medium's authenticity. The spectators considered staging a photograph as an indelicate approach to the subject and medium. In contemporary society, we have become accustomed to staged and entirely fictional photographs. However, both art critics and spectators still retain some concerns about photography, even gallery art photography, as the medium for realistic-looking fiction. Fictional art is seen as more acceptable when the artist addresses the concept in an overt, self-conscious way, with the artist being upfront about staging the photograph. Spectators are more lenient when viewing work they understand is a fictional work, even if the fictional work mirrors real-life scenarios. Lucy Suter believes art photography offers new ways to think about complex reality. Art photography frequently uses genres from painting to trigger a sense of recognition that starts the process of signification. Keith Oatley suggests that art enables thoughts and feelings around an artwork that offer multiple modes of understanding. Art doesn't generally direct people to think in a certain way towards a certain conclusion. Art does, however, offer certain scenarios to ask the spectator to reflect on the theme and topic presented in the work. Due to the development of photography from painting, it might be suggested that photography, particularly art photography, is similarly able to offer the spectator multiple modes of understanding. This is accomplished through certain processes and manipulation of photographs. Roland Barthes suggests there is a deep psychological need to record, retain, and classify the world of human actions. Looking at a photograph, according to Barthes, is like looking at a moment that has passed and replicates what has been lost. Photographs, however, are able to provide more than a depiction of reality. Art photography in particular is a genre of photography that has developed to encompass artists' ideas and concepts. John Burgess states that the more imaginative a photograph is, the more the spectator might understand the artist's experience of the world. Photographs are becoming recognized as a particular vision of a particular artist as opposed to a depiction of reality. Burgess suggests the more imaginative a photograph is, the more likely the spectator might understand the perceived reality of photography is an illusion, and that what is seen is the artist's vision. This is what Burgess believes determines a photograph's value. It is the unique physical existence of the photograph itself that is of value. Willem Flusser believes the significance of a photograph is in the process of looking at it. He considers there are two intentions manifested in an image, the intention of the artist and the intention of the spectator. Flusser believes the challenge of photography is to provide an informed image that stands out from the crowd of redundant photographs people see every day. Art photography provides a generous platform for artists to develop an imaginary world with a fictional character that depicts a narrative the spectator would be able to relate to. It is an ideal medium to create a sense of wonder in the spectator, as imaginary worlds, fictional characters, and a narrative within the work are all able to work together to develop a sense of wonderment. David Bate believes that a photograph has an encoded meaning, and it is up to the spectator to ask what the value of the representation is. The value may be social, personal, aesthetic, political, or ideological. Roland Barthes considers that the given meaning of the photograph hides the constructed meaning. The apparent innocence of the photograph is the paradox of photography. Spectators believe what they see. What they see is that the photograph is a record of reality, and the camera a device that captures the world. The photograph, according to Graham Clark, achieves meaning through a language of codes and has its own language with conventions and histories. The reading of a photograph is read as a text, which involves a series of contradictory meanings and relationships between the spectator and the image. The spectator brings their own experience to the reading of the photograph, adding to a larger language of meaning that is applied to the subject matter depicted within the frame. One way to understand and decode the reading of a photograph is through semiotics, the denotative and connotative meaning. This involves the spectator reading the image as a visual language. There are two aspects in reading an image. The photograph is always a reflection of a point of view, recreating a scene according to cultural discourse. And the photograph is read in terms the spectator understands based on a wider history of aesthetics, culture, and society. Reading a photograph is understood through denotative and connotative meaning. This is the way meaning operates behind the viewing of the image. This is the visual language of the photograph and the underlying process of signification within Western culture. To condense semiotics, a very broad and complex topic, into a few sentences, there are two major categories in the reading of an artwork. They are denotation and connotation. The denotation of a photograph can be understood as what is physically present in the picture, what you can see. It is the literal meaning, the reading of a gesture, expression, object, etc. It's the simple recognition of what is observed, such as a smile, a table, or a person. Beyond the moment of recognition, we move on to a second level of meaning, the connotative meaning. The connotation of a photograph is the immediate cultural meaning based from what is seen. The reading is based on meanings and associations within the object in the picture. The objects become symbolic. Meaning is read into signs, gestures, expression, use of color, etc. This connotation, according to David Bate, is dependent on the knowledge of the spectator. This is how we read artworks. So to try and put this into context and understand the process more clearly, when we look at an artwork, we might see a smile, which is the denotation, the literal representation. Once we see the smile, the connotation happens, triggers based on seeing the smile. For example, when we view the smile, we might think of a particular person, say our mother, and the emotion of being happy. Happiness might make us think of family, people in general, things we like to do with people that make us happy. All of these small thoughts are triggered from seeing the smile, but these thoughts are usually quick and not thought about in great detail, and we may not even be aware of the associations we are having at all, as most of the time they are developed and processed on a subconscious level. All we have done is notice that the character within the artwork is smiling, and we have made associations based on our own upbringing, experiences, and associations. When considering the reading of a photograph is based on cultural discourse and the subject matter of a photograph is what draws the viewer in, it stands to reason that developing an emotional connection with the spectator might provide insight into strategically developing artworks that resonate a particular emotion within the spectator. The artworks that have been displayed throughout the lecture are from a mix of international contemporary fine art photographers. The artists shown throughout this lecture include Loretta Lux, a German artist born in 1969 who lives in Ireland; V. Spears, an Australian artist born in 1962 and lives in France; Maggie Taylor, an American artist born in 1961 and lives in America; Flock van Lith, a Dutch artist born in 1969 who lives in Holland; Brooke Shaden, an American artist who lives in America and was born in 1987; and Jennifer Thorson, an American artist born in 1979 and lives in Mexico. In order to detect and observe artworks that embody a sense of wonder, I selected these artists for us to consider by employing a criterion that each artist had to meet. Each artist had to produce contemporary fine art photographs that are extensively manipulated. The selection process may be considered somewhat subjective, as I had to feel wonder myself when choosing the artists, but wonder for each individual is based on a wide variety of criteria that has been mentioned throughout this lecture. Each artist chosen for you to consider, whether you think the work emits a sense of wonder, has developed a constructed reality, an imaginary world. The selection criteria developed for the collection of artwork chosen included considerations into the breakdown of wonder. The artwork embodied a sense of wonder, the artist is recognized and established, and has had their work exhibited in galleries. There is access or availability to the artist's work through books, internet, art galleries, or art collections. The work is contemporary fine art photography that is manipulated, including compilations of multiple photographs to create a single resolved photographic work. The work is not the vernacular style of everyday photography, and critics have made reference to the artist. The photographs are primarily based on portraiture, with the main subject being a person. The artist has used a deliberate color palette with intentional thematic works. To put these theories into practice, we will consider these two works by Loretta Lux. Please find a pen and paper and consider the following questions. Write the questions down and then we'll consider the photographs. The questions I'd like you to think about are: what elements do these images have that you believe provide wonderment? What is it that draws you into the images? Are you drawn to the subject matter, color scheme, characters, or narrative in the work? Do these images provide qualities, ideas, or scenarios you have never experienced before? Or do these images provoke you to see something in a new light or with a new mindset? Do you relate to the character within the photograph? Do you find you are usually drawn to a specific kind of work, some kind of genre that makes you feel excitement and curiosity? These are all the questions I'd like you to write down for now. Consider these two images by Loretta Lux. If these images do not provide wonderment for you, perhaps you would like to pull up an image from earlier in the lecture and apply these questions to that image. Otherwise, you can find your own image that you feel a connection with and apply these questions. This is just an exercise to get you thinking about what creates wonderment for you. Take your time, pause the video, and answer the questions we wrote down previously. Once you have answered the questions, play the video again. Welcome back. Some qualities that you may have experienced after considering these works might be something along the lines of the following. There is something unusual about the children in the images. When the work is considered in more detail, the children seem doll-like. They do not have a sense of curiosity and animation about them like most children do. The proportions of the children seem a little out, with their heads a little too large for their bodies. These unusual attributes make us consider the work some more, which leads to potential reflection and wonderment. The photographs are somewhat flat in style, with a stylized color palette in soft muted tones. The children are the focus of the image, and the lighting of the children is front-on with minimal shadows. Blue is a color that is used as a pop of contrast and leads you to look at the children's eye color more, which then leads to reflecting on their expression. The children seem sad. There is no context to provide the reason why they are reflective and melancholic. This proposes that perhaps the children are reflections of adults, with their adult-like expressions mourning the loss of their childhood and innocence. These are just some ideas to think about. You might consider the works in a different way. This is my interpretation of the images, and every person experiences and analyzes things in their own way, based on their own upbringing, culture, moods, and preferences. The emotion of wonder can be experienced, but it is subjective. Artists can create work that provides the foundation for wonderment, but it is certain people that will connect with the work in a special way and consider the work in more detail. Now that you have a list of attributes you feel are wondrous for you specifically, based on the theories you have learnt about, perhaps you could consider these qualities and start employing elements of these in your own work. So to recap, what we have looked at in today's lecture is what wonder is, the two types of wonder that can be experienced, the physiological response of wonder, what the feeling of wonder is, the experience of wonder itself, the evolution and categories of emotion. We looked at wonder in art. We have also looked at artistic use of wonder, art photography as a medium for wonder. We have briefly looked at semiotics as a basis for reading photographs, and we've looked at artists that use wonder in their work. So to reiterate, although these are theories of wonderment, don't adhere to all these theories. The key is generally knowing when to employ them and when not to employ them. Sometimes an artwork would be lacking wonderment. These are the elements that are looked for to help support that. So that about wraps everything up for me today. Thanks for watching the lecture.